I was cheated, kicked out of the mansion, and left with nothing. But 5 years later, her father's will gave me $76 million. I lost it. I kicked the ball. She broke her leg. I wasn't there. While she lost everything and was forced to beg for advice from the man she betrayed. The funeral was last week, and I still smell the lilies. They clung to the air in that cavernous church, their sweetness choking out everything else, grief maybe, or the truth. Richard Whitmore's casket gleamed under the stained glass light, a mahogany fortress for a man who'd built an empire and left it all behind. I sat in the third row, not family anymore, but not quite a stranger, watching Vanessa dab her eyes with a silk handkerchief. She looked flawless, as always, like she'd stepped out of a painting. I wondered if she was crying for her father or for the weight of what came next. I'm Nathan, by the way, 42, newly divorced, and trying to piece together how I ended up here, sitting in my old pickup, parked outside a diner I haven't visited in years, with nothing but a thermos of coffee and memories that don't fit anymore. The world feels quieter now, like it's holding its breath. Richard's gone, Vanessa's gone, and I'm left with this ache, not just for what was lost, but for what I thought we had. 10 years ago it was different. Vanessa and I were a story people envied. We met at a gallery opening, her idea, not mine. I was a finance guy crunching numbers for a mid-tier firm, and she was this whirlwind of charm, all sharp wit and golden hair, floating through the room like she owned it. She did, in a way. Her father's name opened doors, but Vanessa had a way of making you forget that. She'd laugh, touch your arm, and suddenly you were the only person in the world. That night she pulled me into a debate about abstract art, which I knew nothing about, and by the end of it I had her number. We were married within a year. It felt right, like we were building something. I'd work late, she'd plan dinners. Lavish ones, with wine I couldn't pronounce and stories about her travels. We'd talk about kids someday, a house by the coast. I thought we were a team. She'd tease me about my spreadsheets, call me her anchor, and I'd grin because I liked being steady for her. Richard approved too, in his gruff way. He'd clap me on the shoulder, say I was good for her, though his eyes always held something unspoken, a question maybe, or a warning. The mansion was our stage, all marble floors and chandeliers, a gift from Richard when he retired. We filled it with moments, lazy Sundays, her painting in the sunroom, me grilling steaks on the patio. I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. But looking back, I see the cracks. Her restlessness when I talked about work, the way she'd changed the subject when I asked about her plans. I told myself it was just Vanessa, being Vanessa, free-spirited, untamed. I loved that about her. I didn't see it was a fault line. Then, 3 months ago, it broke. I came home from a conference, jet-lagged, expecting her smile. Instead, she was waiting in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa like a stranger. "Nathan," she said, her voice flat, "I want a divorce." No preamble, no fight, just those words, sharp as a blade. I stood there, bag still in my hand, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was a joke. She didn't. Her eyes were cold, like she'd already left. I asked why, what I'd done, but she just shook her head. "It's not about you," she said, which hurt worse than if she'd blamed me. That night she told me to leave. I packed a suitcase, drove to a motel, and stared at the ceiling, wondering how paradise had fractured so fast. Now Richard's gone, and I'm back at square one, trying to make sense of it all. The diner's neon sign buzzes in the dusk, and I sip my coffee, bitter and cold. Vanessa's out there, probably planning her next move, while I'm here, holding on to ghosts. I thought we were forever. I thought wrong. I'd been on the road for 3 days. Chicago, some conference about market trends, the kind of thing that numbs your brain with PowerPoints and stale coffee. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my shoes, and see Vanessa's face. Maybe she'd have a glass of wine waiting, or she'd be sprawled on the couch, sketching something she'd never finish. That's how it usually went, and I loved the routine of it. But when I pulled into the driveway that evening, the mansion looked different. The lights were too bright, like they were staging something, and the air felt heavy, expectant. I stepped inside, my suitcase wheels clattering on the marble floor. "Vanessa?" I called, loosening my tie. No answer, just the echo of my own voice. The foyer chandelier gleamed, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I found her in the living room, sitting on the edge of the white leather sofa, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap. She was wearing a black dress, simple but sharp, like she was about to walk into a boardroom or a funeral. Her hair was pulled back, not a strand out of place. She looked at me, and her eyes, those green eyes I'd fallen for, were flat, like a lake frozen over. "Nathan," she said, her voice steady, "sit down. We need to talk." I frowned, dropping my bag by the coffee table. "What's going on? You okay?" I sat across from her in the armchair, still in my rumpled suit, the one she always said made me look like a professor. She didn't smile, didn't lean forward like she usually did when we talked. She just watched me, and the silence stretched until it hurt. "I want a divorce," she said. The words hit like a slap, sharp and sudden. I blinked, waiting for the punchline, for her to crack that sly grin and say she was messing with me. But her face didn't move. No tears, no anger, just that cold, detached calm, like she was reading a script. "What?" I managed, my throat tight. "Vanessa, what are you talking about?" "I've been thinking about this for a while," she said, her tone clipped, like she was explaining a business decision. "It's not working. I don't want to do this anymore." "Do what?" My voice cracked, louder than I meant. "Us? Our life? What's not working?" I leaned forward, searching her face for something, anything. A flicker of the woman who'd laughed with me over burnt pancakes last month, who'd curled up against me during thunderstorms. But she was gone, replaced by this stranger, who wouldn't even meet my eyes. "It's not about you," she said, and I almost laughed because it was such a cliché, except it wasn't funny. I need something else. I need to be free." "Free?" I stood up, pacing now, my hands shaking. "Free from what, Vanessa? We have everything, this house, our plans, 10 years together. What changed? Did I do something? Tell me, because I'm standing here blind." She sighed, a small, impatient sound like I was a child who didn't get it. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "It's not one thing, it's everything. I don't want to explain it, I just want it done." I stopped pacing, my chest tight like someone had sucked the air out of the room. "You don't want to explain?" I said, my voice low, breaking. "You're throwing away our marriage and you can't even tell me why? What am I supposed to do with that?" Her jaw tightened, the first sign of anything real. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Nathan." "Harder?" I laughed, bitter and raw. "You're ripping my life apart and I'm making it harder?" I wanted to yell, to shake her, to make her feel the betrayal clawing at me. I'd given her everything, my time, my loyalty, my heart. I'd stayed up nights helping her brainstorm career ideas she never followed through on, planned vacations to cheer her up when she felt lost, and now she sat there, untouchable, like none of it mattered. "I need you to leave," she said, standing now, her voice like steel. "Tonight." "Tonight?" I stared at her, dumbfounded. "You're kicking me out of our home just like that?" "It's my father's house," she said, and there it was, the first real jab, the reminder of whose name was on the deed. Richard's shadow, always there, even now. "I've already called a lawyer, you'll hear from them soon. Just go, Nathan, please." I stood there, frozen. The room spinning. I wanted to fight, to demand answers, to make her see me, but her face was a wall, and I was crashing against it. "Fine," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "If that's what you want." I grabbed my suitcase, still unpacked, and walked to the bedroom. I threw in a few shirts, a pair of shoes, my laptop, random things, like I was looting my own life. She didn't follow me. She didn't say goodbye. I passed her in the foyer and she was already on her phone, scrolling, like I was a delivery guy who'd overstayed his welcome. Outside, the night was cool, the stars too bright for how dark I felt. I climbed into my truck, the engine rumbling to life, and drove. I didn't scream or cry or punch the dashboard. I just drove, promising myself I'd walk away clean. No lawyers, no fights over furniture or bank accounts. She could have it all. The house, the money, the life we'd built. I didn't want pieces of something broken. I'd start over somehow, because fighting her would only ruin me. But as the mansion's lights faded in my rearview mirror, I felt it. The betrayal, heavy as a stone, settling in my chest. I'd loved her with everything I had, and she'd let me go without a backward glance. The motel bed creaks under me, the kind of cheap mattress that makes you miss home even more. It's been a week since Vanessa kicked me out, and I'm still living out of my suitcase, staring at a popcorn ceiling that looks like it's judging me. My phone's dark, no calls, no texts, just silence. I keep replaying that night in the living room, her cold voice slicing through 10 years like they were nothing, but my mind doesn't stop there. It drifts back, further, to the beginning, to the days when I thought we were unstoppable. Maybe if I trace the steps, I'll figure out where we tripped. It was a Thursday night, 11 years ago, at some pretentious gallery in the city. I was there because my boss thought networking meant sipping overpriced wine around people who talked in riddles. I was 29, climbing the ladder at a finance firm, all ambition and no finesse. Vanessa was the opposite, a spark in a room full of damp matches. I spotted her across the gallery, laughing with some guy in a scarf, her blonde hair catching the light like a halo. She was wearing a red dress, bold but not loud, and when her eyes met mine, she didn't look away. She smirked, like she knew something I didn't. Not smooth, never was, but I walked over anyway. "You look like you actually understand this stuff," I said, nodding at a painting that looked like a toddler's tantrum on canvas. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes, and launched into a fake lecture about emotional chaos in brushstrokes. I called her out on it, said it sounded like bullshit, and she grinned wider. "You're honest," she said. I liked that. We talked for hours. Art, music, my boring job, her wild stories about backpacking in Greece. By the end of the night, I had her number scribbled on a napkin and I was half in love. Our first date was coffee, then dinner, then a walk by the river where she kissed me under a streetlight. Vanessa was a whirlwind, spontaneous, fearless, always pulling me into her orbit. I was the guy who planned, who budgeted, who triple-deaded deadlines, but with her, I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. She'd drag me to midnight jazz clubs or make me try sushi I couldn't pronounce, and I'd tease her about her awful sense of direction. "You're my compass," she'd say, looping her arm through mine, and I'd feel 10 feet tall. We got married 9 months later, a small ceremony in a vineyard because she wanted it intimate but chic. I didn't care about the details, I just wanted her. The early years were golden. I'd leave for work, promoted to senior analyst by then, pulling long hours, and come home to her cooking something ambitious, like coq au vin that was half raw but made us laugh anyway. She'd paint in the sunroom, canvases she rarely finished, or plan parties that left our friends buzzing. I thought we balanced each other. My structure, her chaos, like two halves of a whole. But there was always her father, Richard, looming like a storm cloud she couldn't shake. Vanessa worshipped him and hated him in equal measure. He'd built a real estate empire, handed her a trust fund, but it came with strings, his expectations, his lectures about discipline. She'd tell me stories over wine, her voice sharp, how he'd made her work summers at his office, filing papers while her friends jetted to Ibiza, how he'd call her spoiled when she asked for help. "He thinks I'm nothing without him," she'd say, eyes flashing, and I'd hold her, promising she was enough. I saw it differently. Richard was tough, sure, but he loved her. I'd catch him watching her at family dinners, pride mixed with worry, like he knew something she didn't. Vanessa leaned on that trust fund harder than she admitted. Her shopping sprees, her trips, her projects that never took off. She'd talk about starting a gallery, a fashion line, a nonprofit, but the plans fizzled every time. I tried to help. I'd stay up late researching grants for her ideas, connect her with contacts, even built a spreadsheet for one of her business pitches. "You're too good to me," she'd say, kissing my forehead. But the next day she'd be on to something else, distracted, restless. I didn't mind, not really. I loved being her anchor, thought I could steady her through the storms, but the false starts piled up. Half-finished paintings, abandoned applications, a boutique idea that collapsed when she missed a lease deadline. She'd laugh it off, call herself a free spirit, but I saw the frustration in her eyes. The way she'd pour another glass of wine and change the subject. I started to wonder if it wasn't freedom but fear. Fear of failing on her own, fear of proving her father right. Looking back, I see the cracks I ignored. She'd snap when I asked about her day, dodge questions about her goals. I'd come home to find her scrolling job boards only to close the laptop when I walked in. "I'm figuring it out," she'd say, but her voice had an edge like I was prying. I told myself it was just a phase, that she'd find her path. I didn't see how much she resented needing me, needing Richard. I didn't see her pulling away, inch by inch, until the night she dropped the bomb. Now, lying in this motel room, the memories feel like a movie I misread. We weren't balancing each other. I was holding her up, and she was itching to run. I thought love was enough, my plans, my promises, my patience. But love doesn't work if it's a one-way street. I closed my eyes, the hum of the motel's AC filling the silence, and wonder how I missed it. How the woman I met under a streetlight became the one who sent me packing without a backward glance. The diner's coffee is better than the motel's, which isn't saying much, but it's enough to keep me awake as I sit in this vinyl booth, staring out at a parking lot drowned in dawn light. My notebook's open in front of me, half filled with numbers, budgets, plans, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But it's no use. Richard's funeral keeps replaying in my head, his absence heavier than the casket they carried out. He was the closest thing I had to a father after mine passed, and now he's gone, leaving me to sift through memories of a man who built a world and knew it wouldn't last. Richard Whitmore wasn't just Vanessa's father. He was a force, the kind of man who walked into a room and made it rearrange itself around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, even in his 60s, with gray hair he kept military sort, and eyes that could cut through bullshit like a laser. He'd started as a nobody, son of a mechanic, scraping by in a Rust Belt town, before clawing his way into real estate. By the time I met him, he was worth $380 million, 0 cents, give or take, with properties from Manhattan to Miami. But you'd never know it from how he carried himself. No Rolex, no private jet. He drove a 10-year-old Cadillac and wore suits he'd bought off the rack. "Flash is for fools," he'd say, and he meant it. I met him a month after I started dating Vanessa, at a barbecue in their backyard. Well, one of their backyards, a sprawling estate with a pool nobody used. I was nervous, fumbling my beer, expecting a tycoon to grill me like a steak. Instead, he handed me a spatula and told me to flip the burgers. "Don't burn 'em," he said, grinning, and that was it. No interrogation, just a test of whether I could handle the grill. Later, over charred patties, he asked about my job, my goals. I told him about my work in finance, how I wanted to build something stable, maybe start my own firm someday. He nodded, like he was filing it away. "Stability's good," he said, "but don't confuse it with standing still." That was Richard, always teaching, never preaching. We'd talk whenever I visited, usually in his study, a room that smelled of leather and old books. He'd pour us whiskey, cheap stuff, because fancy liquor's just marketing, and share his rules for life. "Wealth isn't about money, Nathan," he told me once, leaning back in his chair, the firelight carving shadows on his face. "It's about choices. Money just amplifies what's already there, good, bad, or stupid." I listened, soaking it up, because he wasn't just talking theory. He'd lived it, turning deals into dynasties while staying grounded, disciplined, allergic to waste. Discipline was his gospel. He'd wake at 5 a.m., run 5 miles, read 2 newspapers before breakfast. He didn't trust people who couldn't commit to a schedule or a promise. "Show me a man who's late," he'd say, "and I'll show you a man who doesn't respect himself." I took it to heart, started setting my alarm earlier, organizing my days like a general. Vanessa rolled her eyes when I told her dad's boot camp nonsense, but I saw the logic. Richard wasn't building wealth for himself, he was building a legacy, something to outlast him. I admired that, even if it meant he could be hard on her, on me, on anyone who didn't measure up. But Vanessa was his blind spot, or maybe his wound. I saw it in the way he watched her, especially after we got married. One night, maybe 2 years into our marriage, we were at his place for dinner, and Vanessa was late again, strolling in with a new handbag and a story about traffic. Richard's smile was tight, but he didn't snap. Later, when she was chatting with her mother, he pulled me aside. "She's got a good heart," he said, his voice low, whiskey glass in hand. "But she's soft, Nathan, always has been, thinks the world owes her something." I nodded, unsure what to say because I loved her softness, her spark. But his eyes held something heavy. Worry, maybe, or regret. "You're good for her," he added. I tried, God, I tried, but that conversation stuck with me, a warning I didn't fully grasp. Richard saw what I couldn't. Vanessa's immaturity, her refusal to grow up. He'd given her everything, trust funds, connections, that damn mansion. But it wasn't enough. She'd spend like it was infinite, start projects she'd never finish, dodge any job that felt beneath her. He'd call her out sometimes, gentle but firm, and she'd storm off muttering about how he didn't get her. I'd play peacemaker, smoothing things over. But I felt the tension, the way he looked at her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Now, sitting in this diner, I see it clearer. Richard wasn't just building a legacy for Vanessa. He was trying to save her from herself. He knew money without discipline was a trap, that her charm and his wealth wouldn't carry her forever. I wish I'd listened harder, seen the seeds he was planting. Because when he died, he left more than an estate. He left a test, one I'm starting to think Vanessa wasn't ready for. The notebook in front of me is proof I'm moving forward, but Richard's voice still lingers, steady as ever. "Choices, Nathan. It's all about choices. I just hope I made the right ones when it mattered." Vanessa Whitmore didn't do waiting rooms. They were for people with ordinary problems, people who clutched dog-eared magazines and checked their watches. But here she was, perched on a leather chair in Mr. Bennett's law office, her manicured nails tapping the armrest. The room smelled of polished wood and old money, and the receptionist kept offering her coffee, which she declined with a tight smile. She didn't need caffeine. She needed this over with. Her father's funeral was 2 weeks ago, and the grief, or whatever she was supposed to feel, had already faded into irritation. Richard was gone, the estate was hers, and she was ready to move on. A check, a signature, and she'd be free. She'd dressed for the occasion, a tailored cream blazer, silk blouse, heels that clicked like a metronome. Her blonde hair was swept into a low bun, professional but not severe. She imagined the meeting like a scene from a movie. Mr. Bennett, her father's lawyer for decades, sliding a folder across his desk, her name in bold on a 7-figure sum. Maybe 8 figures. Richard had been worth $380 million, 0 cents after all. She'd done the math in her head, late at night, pacing the mansion's empty halls. Even after taxes, it was enough to erase every worry, every fight, every memory of Nathan's disappointed eyes. The receptionist buzzed her in, and Vanessa strode into Mr. Bennett's office, head high. He was older than she remembered, his suit a little loose on his frame, but his eyes were sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Vanessa," he said, standing, his voice warm but measured. "Please, sit." She settled into a chair across from his mahogany desk, crossing her legs. "Let's make this quick," she said, flashing a smile she'd perfected at charity galas. "I know you're busy." Mr. Bennet nodded, but his expression didn't match her ease. He opened a thick folder, papers neatly clipped, and adjusted his glasses. "Your father's will is detailed," he began. He was very specific about his wishes. Vanessa leaned forward slightly, expecting the number. She'd already planned the first moves: a penthouse in the city, a trip to Paris, maybe a foundation in her name to keep the press happy. "Go on," she said, her voice light, like she was humoring him. "There's no lump sum," he said, and the words hit like a dropped glass, sharp and sudden. "What?" she blinked, her smile slipping. "What do you mean, no lump sum?" Mr. Bennet cleared his throat, glancing at the papers as if they'd soften the blow. "Your father set conditions for your inheritance. To access the bulk of the estate, you must meet 3 requirements." Vanessa's stomach twisted, but she kept her face smooth, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Conditions," she repeated, the words sour in her mouth. "What kind of conditions?" He read from the document, his voice steady, like he was reciting a grocery list. "First, you must secure and maintain full-time employment, at least 35 hours a week, verified by pay stubs and employer references. Second, you must enroll in and pass a certified financial literacy course, approved by the estate's executor, myself. Third, you must sustain both the employment and the course certification for a period of 5 years. The room seemed to tilt. Vanessa stared at him, waiting for the part where he laughed, said it was a mistake, a draft her father never meant to keep, but Mr. Bennet's face was granite, and the silence grew heavy, pressing against her chest. 5 years, she said, her voice rising, sharp enough to crack. He wants me to work some job, like a secretary or a barista, for 5 years? And take a class? Is this a joke? It's not a joke, Mr. Bennet said, his tone gentle but firm. Richard was clear. He believed this would help you build. Help me? She stood, her heels sinking into the carpet, her hands trembling. This is punishment. He's controlling me from the grave like he always did. Work? I don't need a job. I'm his daughter. Her voice broke, theatrical, echoing off the walls. She paced, her blazer suddenly too tight, her breath short. He can't do this. I'll fight it. I'll sue. Mr. Bennet raised a hand, calm as ever. You can contest it, but I'd advise against it. The will is ironclad, drafted with multiple witnesses. If you fail to meet these conditions within 5 years, the estate, minus a small living allowance, will be donated to charities of Richard's choosing. Charities. Vanessa laughed, a wild, bitter sound. He'd rather give it to strangers than me. His own flesh and blood? She spun toward the desk, leaning forward, her palms pressing into the wood. What's the allowance? How much do I get now? 10,000 a month, Mr. Bennet said. Enough to live comfortably while you... 10,000. She cut him off, her face flushing. That's nothing. Do you know what it costs to maintain my life? The house, the staff, the... She stopped, catching her reflection in the window, her eyes wide, mascara smudged. She straightened, forcing her voice lower. Fine, I'll do it. I'll play his game. How hard can it be? Mr. Bennet hesitated, then turned the page. There's one more thing, he said, and something in his tone made her freeze. 20% of the estate, $76 million, 0 cents after taxes, is allocated to someone else. Vanessa's mouth went dry. Who? She whispered, though she already knew, the name a blade in her gut. Nathan, Mr. Bennet said, your ex-husband. Richard designated it for him, effective immediately, no conditions. The air vanished. Vanessa sank back into the chair, her legs weak, her mind racing. Nathan. The man she'd thrown out, the man who'd walked away without a fight, was getting $76 million. 0 cents. Her father's money. Her money. She saw Nathan's face, his quiet eyes, his stupid spreadsheets, his patience she'd mistaken for weakness. He'd won, somehow, without even trying. That's impossible, she said, her voice a hiss. Why him? Why not me? Richard didn't explain, Mr. Bennet said, closing the folder, but he was adamant. Nathan's portion is already being transferred. Vanessa didn't hear the rest. Something about paperwork, next steps. She was already halfway out the door, her heels pounding the hallway, her mind a storm of rage and disbelief. Her father had betrayed her. Nathan had stolen from her. And now she was trapped, tethered to a job she didn't want, a class she'd fail, while Nathan walked away rich. She'd make it right. She had to. Because if Vanessa Whitmore was anything, she was a survivor, even if it meant clawing her way through her father's last laugh. Vanessa Whitmore stood in front of her full-length mirror, adjusting the collar of a navy blazer she hadn't worn since a fundraiser 3 years ago. It was too tight now, pinching at the shoulders, but she told herself it looked authoritative, professional. She needed that today. The job interview was at 10, a short side interview, a firm downtown, a consultancy, her old friend Lila had mentioned over cocktails. Vanessa had laughed at first, picturing herself in a cubicle, but the Will's conditions weren't a joke. Full-time employment, 5 years, or she'd lose everything. So here she was, practicing her smile, the one that used to open doors. The office was sterile, all glass and chrome, with a receptionist who didn't look up when Vanessa announced herself. She waited 20 minutes, flipping through a company pamphlet, her stomach twisting. She'd prepared, sort of. She'd skimmed the job description, thrown together a resume that leaned heavily on her event planning experience. Galas counted, didn't they? She'd always been good at talking her way into things. This would be fine. The interviewer, a woman named Karen with a sensible bob and a no-nonsense stare, didn't seem impressed. "Tell me about your experience managing teams," she said, pen poised over a notepad. Vanessa leaned forward, channeling charm. "I've organized high-profile events, charity balls, private dinners, hundreds of people, big budgets. I know how to make things happen." Expecting a nod. Karen's pen didn't move. "So, no direct management, no staff supervision?" Vanessa's smile faltered. "Well, I coordinated with vendors, caterers. That's management, isn't it?" Karen's tone was flat. "This role requires leading a team of 10, handling client accounts, meeting deadlines. Can you give me an example of a time you resolved a conflict under pressure?" Vanessa's mind blanked. She thought of the mansion, the fights with Nathan, his calm voice, her slamming doors. Nothing useful. "I'm a quick learner," she said, her voice brighter than she felt. "I thrive in dynamic environments." The rest of the interview was a blur of questions she couldn't answer. Metrics, software, budgets. She left with Karen's card and a vague "we'll be in touch," her heels clicking too loudly on the lobby floor. Outside, she slid into her Mercedes, gripping the wheel until her knuckles whitened. She wasn't stupid. She'd gone to Vassar, for God's sake. But the way Karen looked at her. Like she didn't get the job, or the next one, a gallery assistant position she'd thought was a sure thing. The manager, a wiry man with pretentious glances, asked about her sales experience. "I don't sell," she'd said, laughing lightly. "I curate experiences." He didn't laugh back. By the third interview, a retail job at a boutique, a desperation move, she snapped when the owner asked why she wanted to start at the bottom. "I'm not starting," she said, her voice sharp. "I'm just transitioning." The owner thanked her for her time. Each rejection chipped away at her, leaving her raw. She wasn't used to failing. At home, the mansion felt bigger, emptier, its marble floors echoing her steps. She'd fire the housekeeper soon enough. $10,000, 0 cents a month, didn't stretch far with her mortgage, car payments, and credit card bills. She'd assumed the inheritance would hit any day, a tidal wave to wash away her debts, so she kept spending. A new handbag to cheer herself up, $4. $4. Dinners at Le Bermond to feel normal, $800, 0 cents a pop. A spa weekend in Napa, because she deserved it, $6.50. The credit card statements piled up, red ink screaming, but she told herself it was temporary. Her father's will was a hurdle, not a wall. She tried the financial literacy course next, a community college program Mr. Bennett approved. The classroom smelled of chalk and desperation, filled with retirees and single moms, people who looked at her like she didn't belong. The instructor droned about budget, compound interest, things she vaguely remembered from college. She lasted 2 sessions before walking out. "I'm not an idiot," she muttered, tossing the syllabus in a trash can. She'd hire a tutor later, when she wasn't so stressed. Her friends were no help. Lila, who'd sworn she'd hook her up, stopped returning calls after the marketing job fell through. Tessa, her brunch partner for years, canceled their standing reservation at the Ivy, citing scheduling conflicts. Even Marcus, who'd flirted with her at every party, ghosted after she asked for a loan. Just $20,000, 0 cents to tide her over. "It's awkward," he texted. And that was that. Vanessa scrolled through her contacts, realizing half hadn't reached out since the funeral. The invitations dried up, no galas, no yacht weekends. She was radioactive. A Whitmore without the wealth to back it up. Nights were the worst. She'd wander the mansion, wineglass in hand, staring at photos of her old life. Her and Nathan in Santorini. Her father at her wedding, stern but proud. She hated him now, hated his conditions, his judgment. And Nathan, $76 million, 0 cents, no strings attached. She pictured him in some tacky condo, counting his money, laughing at her. The thought made her slam her glass down, wine sloshing onto the counter. She tried one more interview, a last-ditch effort at a PR firm. She wore her best Chanel, played the part, confident, poised. But when they asked about her availability, she hesitated. "I have commitments," she said, thinking of Paris, the life she was owed. The interviewer raised an eyebrow, and she knew she'd lost them. Driving home, she screamed into the steering wheel, the sound swallowed by the car's leather interior. Back at the mansion, she opened another bottle of Pinot, her hands shaking as she checked her bank account. $3,200, 0 cents left, and the month wasn't half over. She'd sold a few dresses online, Vera Wang, Dior, for pennies compared to what she'd paid. The housekeeper was gone now, the gardener too. The pool was turning green. She sat on the living room floor, the same spot where she'd told Nathan to leave, and felt the walls closing in. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "Discipline, Vanessa. Earn it." She wanted to scream that she was trying, that she was more than his test, but the silence answered back, and for the first time she wondered if she'd already lost. The diner's become my morning ritual now, a corner booth with a cracked vinyl seat and coffee that's more reliable than my old life. It's been 6 months since Vanessa kicked me out, 4 since Richard's funeral, and 2 since Mr. Bennett called with news that changed everything. $76 million. Straight from Richard's estate. No strings attached. I didn't believe it at first. Thought it was a mistake, a clerical error. But the transfer hit my account, a number so big it felt like a typo. I stared at it for days, waiting for someone to take it back. Nobody did. Now I'm sitting here, sketching plans on a napkin, trying to figure out what a man like me does with a second chance. I didn't want the money at first. It felt like blood money, tied to Vanessa's betrayal, Richard's death. I thought about giving it away, charities, strangers, anyone but me. But Richard's voice kept echoing, that whiskey-rough tone from our talks in his study. "Wealth is choices, Nathan. Use it." He'd seen something in me, something Vanessa hadn't, and that trust was heavier than the dollars. So I decided to build, not burn. No mansions, no yachts, just a life I could stand behind. I started small, renting a 1-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of town. No marble floors, just hardwood that creak under my boots. I bought a desk, a laptop, and a stack of legal pads, and last month I filed the paperwork for Whitmore Consulting. Named for Richard, not me. It's a finance firm, niche but steady, helping small businesses with budgets, investments, the kind of stuff I used to do for faceless corporations. My first client was a bakery downtown, run by a couple who reminded me of my parents. Scrappy, stubborn, real. I cut their overhead by 15%, got them a better loan, and when they sent me a box of scones as a thank you, I grinned like I'd won the lottery. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. The work keeps me grounded, but it's the people who've started pulling me back to life. I'd let friendships slip during my years with Vanessa, too busy playing her anchor, too tired from her storms. But I reached out, tentative at first, expecting awkward silences. Instead, I got beers with Mike, my old college roommate, who laughed about my divorce like it was a badge of honor. "You're free, man," he said, clinking my glass. I reconnected with Sarah, a coworker from my analyst days, who dragged me to her book club. I grumbled about it, but arguing over bad novels with strangers turned into a monthly highlight. I even started running again, joining a group that meets at dawn. The ache in my legs feels honest, like I'm earning every step. I've found hobbies too, things I never had time for when I was Vanessa's shadow. I bought a used guitar, cheap and scratched, and I'm teaching myself chords from YouTube videos. I'm terrible, my fingers fumbling, but there's joy in sucking at something new. I've taken up cooking too, nothing fancy, just chili, stir-fries, recipes I scribble in my notebook. Last week I burned a lasagna so bad the smoke alarm went off and I laughed until my sides hurt. It's weird, finding pieces of myself I didn't know were missing, but I'm starting to like the guy I'm becoming. There's someone else too. I didn't plan on it dating, felt like a minefield after Vanessa, but then I met Claire. She's a graphic designer who works with the bakery, all sharp humor and messy brown curls. We started talking over coffee deliveries, then lunches, then a walk in the park where she teased me about my terrible taste in sneakers. She's not Vanessa, no drama, no grand gestures, just real, warm. The kind of person who listens when you talk. We're taking it slow, no labels yet, but when she smiles at me, I feel something stir, like a part of me I thought was dead is waking up. I don't know where it's going, but for once, I'm not overthinking it. The money helps, no question. It's paid for the firm, the apartment, a used truck that doesn't stall on highways, but it's Richard's faith that keeps me moving. He saw me when I couldn't see myself, through the late nights supporting Vanessa, through her dismissal, through the motel days when I felt like nothing. That's $76 million, 0 cents isn't just cash. It's proof he believed I was worth something. I carry that in my chest, heavier than guilt, lighter than pride. I wish I could thank him, tell him I'm trying to make him proud. Sometimes I think about Vanessa, wonder how she's handling the will's conditions. I heard through Mike, who knows someone who knows her, that she's struggling, job interviews gone south, friends bailing. Part of me feels bad. I loved her once, built a life around her. But then I remember her voice that night in the living room, cold as a closed door, and the pity fades. She made her choice. I'm making mine. Last night, I sat on my balcony, really just a fire escape with a folding chair, and looked at the city lights. My guitar was propped against the wall, my laptop open to an email from a new client. Claire had texted me a dumb meme, and I was still smiling about it. For the first time in years, I felt solid, like I wasn't waiting for the ground to shift. Richard's money gave me a start, but this, building something, laughing again, choosing every day to keep going. This is me. I'm not fixed, not whole, but I'm moving forward, and that's enough for now. The mansion was a tomb now, its silence louder than any argument Vanessa had ever had. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay beside her, the marble cold against her thighs. The chandelier above hadn't been cleaned in months. Dust dulled its crystals, swallowing the light. She'd sold the dining table last week, $2,000, 0 cents, a fraction of what it was worth, to cover the electric bill. The space where it stood gaped like a missing tooth, and she avoided looking at it, just like she avoided the mirrors that showed her hollow eyes and unwashed hair. It had been 9 months since the will reading, 9 months since her father's conditions had chained her to a life she didn't know how to live. She'd tried. At least she told herself she had. The job interviews were disasters, each one a fresh humiliation. After the boutique fiasco, she'd aimed lower. A receptionist gig at a dental office. She'd shown up in a blazer that smelled faintly of half-truths. The office manager, a woman with a perm and a pitying smile, asked if she could handle high call volumes. Vanessa had nodded, said of course. But when they tested her on the phone system, her hands shook, and she hung up on a fake caller twice. "Maybe this isn't for you," the manager said, and Vanessa left without a word, her face burning. She tried the financial literacy course again, a different one this time, online to avoid the classroom stairs. She'd sit at her laptop, the mansion's Wi-Fi flickering, and try to focus on terms like amortization and liquidity. But the words blurred, her mind wandering to her father's voice, his lectures about discipline, his disappointment. She failed the first quiz, then the second. By week 3, she stopped logging in, the course's emails piling up. "You're not stupid," she'd whisper to herself, pacing the kitchen at 2 a.m., but the words felt like a lie. If she wasn't stupid, why couldn't she do this? Why couldn't she win? The failures fed something darker, a weight that settled in her chest and wouldn't lift. She'd wake up gasping some nights, her heart racing like she'd been running, though she hadn't left the house in days. The anxiety came in waves. Over a late mortgage notice, a grocery run where her card was declined, a voicemail from Mr. Bennett she couldn't bring herself to play. Depression followed, quieter but heavier, turning simple tasks into mountains. Showering took effort. Eating was a chore. She'd nibble on crackers or leftover takeout, the fridge nearly empty. She stopped wearing makeup, stopped brushing her hair. The Vanessa who'd turned heads at galas was gone, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. The mansion didn't help. It was too big, too quiet, its rooms filled with ghosts. She'd wandered past the sunroom where she used to paint, the canvases now stacked in a corner, untouched. The master bedroom felt like Nathan's still, his side of the closet empty but somehow louder for it. She slept on the couch most nights, the TV flickering with shows she didn't watch, the noise a flimsy shield against the silence. She'd sold more furniture, the guest bed, a set of lamps, her mother's old vanity, for cash, to keep the lights on. The pool was a swamp now, algae thick enough to walk on. She couldn't afford a gardener, couldn't afford anything. Her friends were long gone. She'd stopped calling after the rejections piled up, Lila's busy excuses, Tessa's silence, Marcus's blocked number. She'd scroll Instagram sometimes, seeing their lives move on, vacations, engagements, babies. They didn't need her anymore, not without her father's name or her old glamour. The isolation was a blade cutting deeper each day. She'd talk to herself sometimes, muttering arguments with her father, with Nathan, with the world. "I'm trying," she'd say, her voice breaking. "Isn't that enough?" She pinned her last hope on the will itself. There had to be a loophole, a mistake. She hired a lawyer, not the best because she couldn't afford the best, but a guy named Gary with a strip mall office and a comb-over. He took her case for a $5,000 0 cents retainer, half her monthly allowance, and spent weeks reviewing documents. Vanessa waited, imagining a judge tearing up her father's conditions, handing her the estate like she deserved. She pictured Nathan's face when he had to give back his $76 million, 0 cents. The smugness wiped clean. Gary called her on a rainy Tuesday, his voice tinny through her cracked phone speaker. "I'm sorry, Vanessa," he said. "The will's airtight, multiple witnesses, notarized revisions, no ambiguities. Contesting it would cost more than you've got and you'd lose." She hung up without responding, the phone slipping from her hand. She stood in the foyer, rain pounding the windows, and screamed, a raw, guttural sound that echoed off the bare walls. She sank to the floor, her leggings damp from a leak she hadn't fixed, and sobbed until her throat ached. Her father had won. Nathan had won. She'd lost everything, not just the money but the life she'd known, the person she'd been. That night she opened another bottle, the last of her father's vintage Bordeaux, and drank straight from it. The clock on Vanessa's phone ticked past midnight, marking the end of the 5-year deadline her father's will had set. She sat on a sagging couch in her new apartment, a one-bedroom in a gray building that smelled of mildew and fried onions. The walls were thin, letting in her neighbor's TV and the hum of traffic outside. A single lamp cast a weak glow over the room, its thrift store shade tilted like it was giving up. She stared at the email from Mr. Bennett, the subject line stark, estate of Richard Whitmore, final notice. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't need to. She knew what it said. 5 years ago she'd left his office, raging, vowing to beat the will's conditions, get a job, keep it, pass a financial literacy course, hold steady for 5 years. It sounded simple then, a game she could win with charm and grit. But the years had unraveled her, each failure a thread loose until there was nothing left. She'd tried jobs, receptionist, retail, even a brief stint as a barista that ended when she spilled coffee on a customer and walked out. The interview stopped coming after a while. Her resume was a patchwork of gaps, and her confidence had curdled into desperation. Employers saw through her, sensing the entitlement she couldn't hide, the way she bristled at tasks she deemed beneath her. The financial literacy course was no better. She'd enrolled 3 times, each attempt ending in dropped classes or failed exams. The numbers swam on the screen, budgets, interest rates, investments. Mocking her. She'd scream at her laptop, slam it shut, and pour another drink, telling herself she'd try again tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Depression had its claws in her, making mornings impossible, afternoons a fog. Anxiety kept her up nights, her heart pounding over bills she couldn't pay, calls she wouldn't answer. She'd sold the mansion 3 years ago, the sale barely covering her debts after years of reckless spending, designer clothes, trips she couldn't afford, loans to friends who never paid her back. She'd moved twice since then, each apartment smaller, cheaper, further from the life she'd known. This one was the last stop, $900, 0 cents a month, no dishwasher, a stove that sparked when she turned it on. Her allowance, $10, 0 cents a month, had stopped today, cut off as the will dictated. She'd known it was coming but hadn't prepared, hadn't saved. Her bank account held $412, 63 cents. Her credit cards maxed out. She'd sold her Mercedes, her jewelry, even the Chanel bag she'd once carried like a trophy. All she had now was a suitcase of clothes, a cracked phone, and a coffee table she'd found on the curb. Mr. Bennett had warned her last month, his voice kind but firm over the phone. The deadline's approaching, Vanessa. If you don't meet the conditions, the estate transfers to charities. She'd hung up on him, unable to hear it. Charities. Her father's money. Hundreds of millions, going to strangers, to causes she didn't care about. Hospitals, schools, some environmental fund he'd scribbled into the will. She'd imagined fighting it, hiring another lawyer, but Gary's words from years ago echoed. Airtight. She had nothing left to fight with. She opened the email now, her thumb trembling. It was brief. The conditions unmet, the estate's bulk, $304 million, 0 cents after Nathan's share dispersed to the listed organizations. A final line noted her allowance's end and wished her well. She laughed, a dry, broken sound, and dropped the phone. Wished her well, like she was a tenant being evicted, not a daughter disinherited. Vanessa leaned back, staring at the ceiling's water stains. The apartment felt smaller tonight, the walls pressing in. She thought of the mansion, its marble floors, its chandelier. She thought of Nathan, somewhere out there, rich and free with his $76 million, 0 cents. She thought of her father, his stern face, his belief that this would save her. It hadn't. It had stripped her bare, left her here, 39 and broke, with no friends, no family, no plan. She stood, unsteady, and walked to the window. The street below was empty, sodium lights buzzing in the dark. Tomorrow, she'd have to find a job. Anything, even cleaning houses, something to pay the rent. The thought made her stomach churn, but there was no choice now. Her father's game was over, and she'd lost. All she had left was survival, and even that felt like more than she could carry. Vanessa sat at a wobbly kitchen table in her apartment, a spiral notebook open in front of her, its pages warped from a leak she hadn't fixed. The pen in her hand felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else, someone who knew what to say. The room was quiet except for the drip of the faucet and the faint hum of a streetlight outside. She'd been up for hours trying to find the words, each draft messier than the last. This wasn't about money. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. This was about something bigger, something she couldn't name but felt like her last chance to be human again. She started writing, her handwriting shaky but deliberate. Dear Nathan, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. It's been 5 years since I pushed you out, and I've spent every day since carrying that choice. I was wrong, not just about us, but about me. I thought I knew what I wanted, thought I could outrun my father's shadow. I couldn't. His will broke me, but I broke myself first. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I don't deserve either. I'm writing because you were the one person who saw me, really saw me, and I threw that away. I'm living in a place you wouldn't recognize now, working odd jobs, trying to figure out who I am when there's nothing left to hide behind. I'm scared, Nathan. Not of being broke, but of being this empty forever. You always had a way of finding solid ground. If you have any advice, not pity, just wisdom, I'd listen. I'm sorry for the words I said, the ones I didn't, for thinking love was something I could control. I hope you're happy. You deserve that. Vanessa. She sealed the letter, her hands trembling, and mailed it the next morning before she could change her mind. It felt like letting go of a weight, even if she never heard back. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tucked between bills and a flyer for pizza delivery. I recognized Vanessa's handwriting instantly, the looping V sharp despite the cheap envelope. I stood in my apartment's kitchen, the hum of the fridge filling the silence, and stared at it like it might bite. I sat at my desk, the one I'd bought when I started Whitmore Consulting, and slid it open. Her words hit like a slow wave, not crashing but sinking deep. Vanessa, humbled. Vanessa, remorseful. It didn't sound like her. Not the woman who'd cut me loose without a glance, but the details, odd jobs, fear, emptiness, felt real, raw, in a way she'd never been with me. I read it twice, then set it down, my coffee cold beside me. I thought about my life now, the firm, growing steady with 8 clients, runs with Claire, who'd become more than a maybe, her laugh a fixture in my days. Evenings with friends, guitar chords I'd finally mastered. Richard's $76 million. 0 cents had started it, but I'd built this. Brick by brick, choice by choice. Vanessa's letter didn't undo that, didn't pull me back to the mansion's cold marble or her colder eye. It just reminded me how far I'd come. I could have written back, offered advice like she asked, budget tips maybe, or a line about resilience. But what would it change? She wasn't my responsibility anymore, hadn't been for years. Her apology was hers to carry, not mine to fix. I folded the letter, slipped it into a drawer with old tax forms, and closed it. That chapter was done, not with anger but with quiet certainty. I had my life to live, and for the first time, I wasn't looking back. I'm sitting on my fire escape again, the one I've grandly dug a balcony, with a beer in hand and the city sprawling below like a map of possibilities. It's been 6 years since Vanessa sent me packing, a year since her letter landed in my mailbox, and I'm still here, still building, still breathing. The stars are faint tonight, drowned out by streetlights, but I don't mind. I've learned to find light in smaller things, a client's handshake, a chord I nail on my guitar, Claire's hand brushing mine during a movie. Life's not perfect, but it's mine, and that's enough. Looking back, I see the lessons carved into the years like initials on a tree. Love was the first, and it hit the hardest. I thought love meant loyalty, meant showing up no matter what. I'd show up for Vanessa through her whims, her rages, her half-started dreams, because I thought that's what you do. But love without respect is just a cage. She didn't respect me, not my time, not my heart, and I let her, because I didn't respect myself enough to walk away. When she finally cut me loose, it hurt like hell, but it freed me. I learned to love better. With Claire, with friends, with myself, because respect holds the door open for something real. Money was the other lesson, and Richard taught me that one, even if he didn't mean to. His $76 million, 0 cents could have ruined me. Turned me into someone who buys happiness in bulk. Cars, houses, distractions. I saw what money did to Vanessa, how it fed her hunger without filling her up. Money without discipline is destruction, a fire that burns the house down. I chose different. Whitmore Consulting started small. Me, a laptop, a bakery's books. But it's grown to 12 clients now, with an office I'm leasing downtown. I don't touch the principle of Richard's gift. It's invested, safe, a safety net I don't lean on. What I earn, and every dollar feels like a brick in something solid. The business keeps me busy, but it's the future that keeps me awake, in a good way, not the old anxious kind. I see it clearly, the firm expanding, maybe a second office in a year or two, helping more small businesses like the ones I grew up around. I see Claire and me, no rush, but building something steady. Dinners, trips. Maybe more if it feels right. I see runs at dawn, book club arguments, new songs I'm learning to play. It's not a mansion or a movie ending. It's better, quiet, real, mine. Vanessa crosses my mind sometimes, a shadow that doesn't sting anymore. Her letter's still in my drawer, unread since I filed it away. I don't know where she is now. Another apartment, another job, maybe a new start. I hope she's finding her way, not because I owe her that hope, but because I don't carry grudges anymore. They're too heavy, and I've got too much to hold on to. I take a sip of my beer, the bottle cool against my palm, and watch a plane blink across the sky. Richard's voice echoes, softer now. Choices, Nathan. I made mine. Discipline over drift, respect over blind devotion, a life rebuilt over one burned down. The fire escape creaks as I lean back, the city humming below. I'm not chasing anymore, not proving anything to anyone. I'm here, present, with a business growing and a peace I've fought for. The future's wide open, and for the first time, I'm ready to walk into it.